Ever wondered how a user-friendly and visually appealing software interface is designed? Well, you're about to find out. User interface or UI design, in the realm of object-oriented analysis and design, also known as OOAD, is all about crafting interfaces that are not just visually appealing, but also intuitive and user-friendly. The main aim here is to facilitate seamless interaction with software systems. While OOAD primarily focuses on a system's internal structure and behavior, UI design zeroes in on how users interact with those systems. This involves designing screens, controls, navigation, and overall user experience. So while the system's inner workings are important, it's equally essential to create an interface that users find easy and enjoyable to use. So how do we go about creating such an interface? Let's delve into the process. User interface design isn't just about making things look pretty. It's about creating a seamless, intuitive user experience. And to achieve that, we follow some key principles. At the forefront is usability. The interface should be as easy to use and understand as possible. This includes providing clear instructions, intuitive navigation, and accessible controls. Think of it as creating a path of least resistance for your users, like having consistent placement of navigation elements, using common design patterns, and simplifying workflows wherever possible. Next, we have consistency. By maintaining consistent UI elements across the application, we can improve user understanding and reduce learning curves. This can be achieved through uniform button styles, consistent color schemes, and standardized typography. Then there's feedback. It's essential that users receive clear feedback for their actions to understand the system's response. This can be as simple as a loading indicator, or as detailed as error messages, success confirmations, and tool tips. Accessibility is another cornerstone. Designing with users of different abilities in mind ensures that your interface is accessible to all. This could involve supporting keyboard navigation, providing high-contrast options, or ensuring screen reader compatibility. And finally, aesthetics. A visually pleasing interface can enhance user engagement and satisfaction. This includes choosing appropriate colors, typography, and layouts. Think balanced design, appealing color schemes, and attractive visual elements. By adhering to these principles of usability, consistency, feedback, accessibility, and aesthetics, we can ensure a user-friendly and engaging interface. But remember, these principles are not standalone. They intertwine and complement each other, all working together to create a harmonious user experience. So when designing your next interface, keep these principles in mind. They'll help guide your decisions and ensure your interface not only looks good, but also feels good to use. Because at the end of the day, user interface design is all about the user. It's about making their interactions with your software as smooth, as efficient, and as enjoyable as possible. Designing a user interface is a systematic process. It begins with understanding the user and ends with integrating the design into the system. The journey from conception to realization is marked by several key steps that ensure the interface is not only visually appealing, but also functional and user-friendly. The first step is requirement gathering. This involves understanding the user's needs and expectations. User interviews, surveys, and other UX research methods are typically employed to gather these insights. The goal is to get into the minds of the users, understand their pain points, and identify their needs. Once we have a good understanding of the users, the next step is to define user personas and scenarios. User personas are fictional characters that represent the typical users of the system. They help us understand the user's characteristics, needs, and motivations. Scenarios, on the other hand, outline specific tasks that the users might undertake. These tools help us design a UI that meets real-world needs. With a clear picture of the users and their needs, we move on to wireframing and prototyping. Wireframes outline the basic structure of the UI, while prototypes allow for a more detailed design, including interactions and user flows. Tools like Sketch, Figma, Adobe XD, and Axure RP come in handy at this stage, allowing us to create detailed and interactive prototypes. Once we have a prototype, the next step is user testing. This involves testing the UI with real users to gather feedback on usability, functionality, and overall experience. Methods such as usability testing, A/B testing, and eye tracking studies can be used to gather this feedback. The goal is to refine the design and identify potential issues before they become problems. Based on the feedback received from user testing, the next step is design iteration. Here we refine the design to improve usability and address any issues that were identified during testing. This is a cyclical process that continues until the UI design meets the desired requirements. Finally, once the design is finalized, it's time for integration with the system design. This step ensures that the UI design aligns with the underlying system design. It involves ensuring that the user interface is consistent with the system's functionality and architecture. This includes considerations like data binding, event handling, and interaction with back-end systems. Each of these steps is vital in ensuring that the interface is not only visually appealing, but also functional and user-friendly. It's a journey that requires careful planning, attention to detail, and a deep understanding of the users and their needs. But the reward is a user interface that is intuitive, engaging, and a pleasure to use. Now that we understand the process, let's look at some best practices that can elevate our UI design. Firstly, always design for the user. This means understanding the user's needs and designing an interface that caters to those needs. It involves empathy, user research, and a commitment to create a user-centered design. Prioritize ease of use and an intuitive interface that users feel comfortable navigating. A well-designed interface should be so intuitive, users feel like they already know how to use it. Next, minimize complexity. An effective interface is one that is simple and uncluttered. It's easy to get carried away and add all sorts of bells and whistles, but remember, every additional button, image, and line of text adds complexity. Instead, focus on the essentials. Keep the interface clean and straightforward, and avoid unnecessary elements that can confuse users. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication in UI design. Lastly, utilize design patterns. Design patterns are solutions to common design problems. They provide a framework of tried and true solutions that enhance user familiarity and reduce learning curves. Users have grown accustomed to certain patterns, like the hamburger menu for navigation or the shopping cart for e-commerce sites. By using these established patterns, you're leveraging the collective experience of all the users who've come before, making your interface easier to understand and use. But remember, while design patterns can be helpful, they're not set in stone. Don't be afraid to break the mold if it serves your users better. User interface design is a balance between following established conventions and innovating for a better user experience. In conclusion, the best practices for user interface design in 008 revolve around the user. Always design with the user in mind, strive for simplicity, and make use of familiar patterns. By following these practices, we can create a UI that is intuitive, engaging, and aesthetically pleasing. And remember, a well-designed UI isn't just about looking good. It's about making the user's interaction as simple and efficient as possible, thereby boosting user satisfaction and ultimately, the success of your software system. So, that's a wrap on user interface design in 008. It's a combination of art and science where aesthetics meets functionality. To recap, we've journeyed through the fascinating world of user interface design in object-oriented analysis and design. We've discovered how this process is focused on creating intuitive, user-friendly, and visually appealing interfaces. These are the interfaces that facilitate seamless interaction between users and software systems, making technology accessible to all. We've delved into the key principles of UI design, unearthing the importance of usability, consistency, feedback, accessibility, and aesthetics. These are the pillars that uphold any successful user interface, creating an environment where users feel comfortable, understood, and engaged. We've also navigated the UI design process in 008, starting with the critical stage of requirement gathering, defining user personas and scenarios, and moving on to wireframing and prototyping. We've learned the significance of testing and iterative design, and how they contribute to a refined user-centric final product. Finally, we've emphasized the need for the integration of the UI design with the system design, ensuring harmony between the user's experience and the system's functionality. Moreover, we've explored some best practices, reminding us to always design for the user, to minimize complexity, and to utilize commonly accepted design patterns. These practices guide us in creating interfaces that are not only functional, but also enjoyable to use. In essence, user interface design in OOAD is about understanding the user's needs, creating an environment that caters to those needs, and continuously refining the design based on user feedback. It's about creating a bridge between the user and the technology, making the interaction not just possible, but pleasant and productive. Remember, a good interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not that good. So keep it simple, keep it intuitive, and keep your users in mind. Happy designing!